Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, and it's the first day of my Bulgaria trip. It's the morning, I'm just getting my breakfast. I'm getting banitsa for breakfast. Banitsa is the traditional Bulgarian snack. It's that kind of flake pastry with feta cheese inside. Sileni is a Bulgarian name. And I'm sitting in Sofia's central railway station. A little bit sad because this is normally the place where I set off from on adventures, but today I'm not, because I've got a hire car, and which is great and it makes things a lot more convenient, but of course what it also means is that you don't have the romance of rail travel. Now, people who've known me for a while will know that I'm not really into modern architecture, but this place, although incredibly modern in terms of the design, is a bit of a brutalist masterpiece. It is this huge atrium. It's enormous, and it talks of that brave new world that the communists wanted to build. I think it's spectacular, and it's pretty much as it's meant to be. That said, the ticket area behind me, there, I think that floor is new. I don't think it used to extend that far out. It has kind of marred the space a bit, but even so, you can still get the kind of full glory of what the architects planned. So this is where I'm starting my holiday. I'm going to have my breakfast, and I want to explore some museums. I want to go to the Museum of Socialist Art, which didn't exist last time I was in Bulgaria. And then I'll probably just have a little bit of a walk around, and I'm meant to pick up my car at 5 p.m. So that's it from me, more later. Keep travelling. Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, and I'm getting towards the end of my first day in Bulgaria. As you can see, last time I spoke to you I was in Sofia railway station, and now I'm not. I'm travelling, I'm on the road, I'm in the car, and I'm about a third of the way between Sofia and Veliko Turnovo, which is my destination for this evening. I'm going to Veliko Turnovo because that's where Alex is. Alex is the friend that I'm going to see, and we're meeting up in a hotel in Veliko Turnovo, and then we're going to be travelling together for the best part of 2 weeks. So, what have I done today? Well, after visiting the railway and having my breakfast, I took the metro to the Museum of Socialist Art. Now, that's quite interesting in two respects. One is that the Museum of Socialist Art didn't exist when I lived in Bulgaria, so it's a brand new museum, but also the metro didn't really exist. When I lived there, the first line of the Sofia metro opened, and it kind of went from nowhere to nowhere through the centre of Sofia. I travelled the length of it just to see what it was like, and I remember it used old kind of Soviet metro trains, the same that they had in Budapest, Moscow, and I've seen them in Yerevan and Tbilisi and places like that. And it wasn't a very useful system at all then, but now there are 4 lines, and I've used 3 of them today. Sofia's got this great little metro system that makes getting around so easy. And I remember when I used to live in Bulgaria and also on other visits, there was a lot of walking around, there was catching trams, which are always a bit difficult to get your head around if you're not a native. Now Sofia, it's a doddle. You get on the metro, and it certainly served all the places I want to go. And the stations were pretty nice, actually. They were quite grand. And although there are a few of the old Soviet-style trains about, most of them are newer trains, and they're really quite smart. They've got lovely numbers on them. I know this doesn't sound very impressive, but trust me, they're just really quite smart little trains. So yeah, that's nice, and that's a new Sofia experience, as too was the Museum of Socialist Art. Now, it was good, but it could have been better. I mean, it was quite a bit out, appropriately next to Georgy Dimitrov station. Georgy Dimitrov was the the first communist leader of Bulgaria. So it's nice there's a station named after him. Although I think it's just named that because that's the road that it's next to. But yeah, it's in a Ministry of Tourism building, and it occupies essentially a garden and one floor of one wing. And what they've got is they've got a small art gallery with examples of socialist art. So there was some I quite liked. There was one very striking painting of what looked like a student girl, this earnest student revolutionary. I can't remember the name. I'll put it in the video, but I'll look her up to see what it was she did. But she looked like this very earnest intellectual revolutionary. And then there was, some standard kind of, like one called the Foundry, which was, obviously all about an iron foundry. And then there was, there was ones of various revolutionaries, some of whom I knew about, some of whom I didn't. But it was interesting. There was also a selection of posters from around the socialist world. So there was quite a few Chinese ones, a couple of Polish, there was a Hungarian one and stuff, so that was interesting. But I have to say, because I quite like socialist art, and the examples that were on display there were not the best I'd seen. So, it might be that Bulgarian socialist art never quite reached the same heights as some of the other countries. I don't know. But, yeah, so that's that. And, but then they had a garden of sculptures, and these seem to be quite popular. So, the first one of these was called the Communist Statue Park in Budapest, and I went to that in 2003. There was, the standard like Lenin statues and all that, but I quite like ones. There was some of women in the cooperative farm, and I could just imagine, like some kind of intellectual sculpture coming to a cooperative farm and saying to the, the women or the guys that were there, right, I need you to pose for me. And it's like, I know this sounds cheesy, but to be immortalized in art is a great thing, and it's something that's only normally available to the elites. And like how they must have felt, like, gonna make a statue of me, wow. And what struck me actually was how conservatively dressed, because these were all done in the 1950s, and how conservatively dressed the ladies in the collective farm were. They were all wearing headscarves, and they really were straight out of a peasant society. And I think we forget that when we criticize the things that communism didn't achieve, we forget what it did and what the societies that it took in Eastern Europe, or at least some of them, were peasant societies with illiterate populations, with no industrialization, and they literally wrenched them into the 20th century. And when you look at the extremely liberated kind of Bulgarian womanhood of today, and those statues of women in the 1950s, who of course were idealized portraits of liberated women, so we're not the we're not the reactionary norm, then you think, my God, they really did make a huge difference. So anyway, that's that. Then I had a little bite to eat, and I got back on the metro and went to the centre, and the central station's called Serdica. Serdica is the old Roman name for the city, and there's a lot in and around the metro station. There's a lot of archaeological excavations they did where they dug up the old like Roman city. To be honest though, it's very difficult to tell what it all once was, so it's not that interesting because it's just a lot of stones and it needs a bit more explanation. But I was there and I went in the mosque. And what's the name of the mosque? think it's called the Banya Bashi Mosque, and it's the only Ottoman mosque in Sofia, so far as I am aware, and it's looking a lot better than it did last time I was there. So last time I was there, you know, I've been in that mosque several times, but it's all freshly painted. It's really nice, and there's some beautiful stained glass in the windows, and it was just really nice, because sadly a lot of Ottoman mosques, probably due to Salafist trends, will get whitewashed, and of course they shouldn't be. They should be decorated with calligraphy and, you know, like not so much the geometric patterns, more like floral patterns that the Ottomans were really keen on, and they really are works of beauty. And this one was all, you know, freshly painted in that, and it was nice. I went in to pray for a friend, but I was very pleasantly surprised, and I got chatting to a lady in there in a headscarf called Emine, and she was a Bulgarian Turk, and I think she was some kind of custodian, because she came over to me and she said, "Have you got any questions and stuff?" And she was considerably more religious than most Bulgarian Muslims seem to be. I mean, it was quite interesting. Before she spoke to me, I observed there was this family come in, and this woman who was normally dressed probably in her 50s, with some kids, and the kids were all in shorts, including the girls. And she greeted them, and she was very nice and polite. She says, "Well, you really should be wearing a headscarf in here." And and the older woman put the headscarf on, but she didn't force it on the kids, and you know, and she was just really nice and friendly with them. But I mean, it is such a secular country, particularly in comparison with British Islam, which is really quite extreme at times. But yeah, so that was that. And I was chatting to her, and she was saying that it had been done up about 10 years ago, because when they were building the metro line, the big cracks had formed in the mosque, so it needed work doing. But she said that the paintwork, like the designs in it, were they were based on the originals, because before there'd been mosaics which were from a previous restoration, but the archaeologists or whoever it was, the restorers, had found that they were not the original, and actually what is now is closer, or is what the original should be. Believe it was funded by Turkish money, and they looked very similar to some of the restorations I'd seen in Albania. Particularly, I know it's not a restoration, but the Bektashi tombs, where I went to the World Bektashi headquarters, that had very similar calligraphy going on there, although they were new. And so yeah, I was chatting to her, and I said, look, I would be going to lots of Islamic sites in Bulgaria. She told me the Tarnovo Mosque has been restored, which is kind of nice, because it's an amazing mosque and it deserves a restoration, but I quite liked it how it was, so I hope they haven't ruined it. But I said I was going to the Mir Baba in Isparik, which is the Sufi shrine, and I said, you know, do you know of any other tekes, Sufi shrines in Bulgaria? And she said, oh yes. She says, there's one in Sofia. And I said, oh, is it an old one or a new one? And she says, oh yes, it's an old one. It's an Ottoman era one. And she told me where it was. I've looked it up, and I'm hoping to maybe pop in there on the way back. It's a bit out of town. It's not exactly in Sofia, but yeah, so I'm hoping to go there. Anyway, next up after the mosque, I went to the old baths, which are next to they're next to the mosque, and the style of the building, although they're Victorian, is kind of meant to echo the mosque. And they are now the Museum of Sofia, and they were being done up last time I was in Sofia. I couldn't go in them, and they're a nice Victorian building. What's interesting, I mean, there was an archaeological gallery which was quite interesting. There was a load of stuff on the royal family, which isn't really my thing, if I'm honest, but you know, it was there. And then there was stuff on the actual history of the city, so a mock-up of one of the first trams and that. But what it did say is that as the city grew during the Ottoman period, it was a majority Muslim city, and this is something that I've been aware of, I mean, across the Balkans, but Bulgaria, it is particularly guilty of it, is this kind of rewriting of history, in that it's always presented that Bulgaria was this great Christian kingdom, and then the Ottomans came in, and they always call it the slavery or the yoke, and it, you know, and they oppressed the people, but then in the 19th century they had their liberation, they rose up and liberated, and that's all true. I mean, I'm not saying it's not true, but what is not mentioned is how Bulgarian society changed in the interim. And of course there was the immigration, yes, of a lot of Turks from other parts of the empire. My friend Gilbert and his family, of course, are part of that. But there were also Bulgarians who converted, and my friend Fatma, who's a Pomak, they converted particularly, but it wasn't just them. And, you know, Sofia, and I remember when I was in Varna, there was an exhibition of old photos, and there was a picture of Varna from the sea, and it was literally a sea of minarets. And there's now one, well, there was when I lived there, there's one mosque in Varna, and with not a very prominent minaret, and they have basically erased the Islamic history, and they kept, like, the mosque that I went to as a kind of token reminder, and probably, you know, for use by the Ottoman embassy and that kind of stuff. But, you know, they literally demolished mosques or converted them for other use, and it did talk about two great mosques, one of which was the Banya Bashi Mosque, and the other one is now a church, the Seven Saints Church, and I want to look up where that church is, because maybe that would be quite interesting to visit. But yeah, so I thought that was very interesting, and again, there was virtually nothing about the Islamic history of Sofia at all in there, except there was one small mock-up of a wealthy person's room, and it didn't even say they were Turkic or anything. It just had very oriental seating and a Quran on a stand, and that was it. And so that was that. My next destination, I went to the main, it's called the Largo, and it's the main kind of street where, in the communist day, the ceremonial type street where they had the parades and stuff, and buried within it is a very ancient church, St. Pedka, but that was shut, unfortunately, and round in behind one of the ministry buildings there's St. George Rotunda Church, which was closed because they were having a service, so I didn't go in either of those ancient churches, which was a shame. I had a coffee, and then I went to the National Museum of Archaeology. Now, I think I went to that museum years ago when I was living in Bulgaria, and I think I went to it with Fatma. But do you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. I certainly went to a museum around there, but I'm like, the thing is that I'm sure I would have remembered it better, because, or maybe it's just I'm more aware now, I don't know. And I'll tell you why I'm going on about this and not making a lot of sense, is because the National Museum of Archaeology is housed in an Ottoman building, right? And I thought, well, this is either a huge hammam or it was a mosque. So I asked them, was this a mosque or a hammam? And they said it was a mosque. And it would have been an enormous mosque. It would have been a cathedral mosque, and it's now this museum. And I just think, like, if I'd have gone there with Fatma, like, she would have noticed that, because she's Muslim, right? But I literally, I remember going to this museum, but I can't remember anything about it. Anyway, the National Museum of Archaeology is, as it says on the tin, it's a museum of archaeological finds. And there's, there's this, it's in this beautiful Ottoman mosque. And there's 2 rooms off it, one of which is the treasure room. There's lots of gold in there. Reminded me of some of the stuff I saw in Cyprus. That said, it was a good museum, but it could have been better, perhaps. I don't know. Like, the thing is it was, again, and maybe this is just me, that I like to look for hidden histories, and I like to look for, you know, the underdog. But it just struck me that there was this rewriting of history going on, in that you had all the ancient stuff, and the ancient stuff was interesting. A lot of goddess worship. And I have to say, you know, as a man who appreciates the female figure, people in Neolithic times really did like, they liked, as some Exolot once said, they liked big butts. And really, a lot of that going on there, and a lot of goddess worship. Also, all the altars were triangular. There was lots of clay altars, and they were all triangular, and I wondered if there was a reason for that, if there was a significance, because surely it would be easier to do a square one. But maybe it's the Trinity, prefiguration of the Trinity. Well, the priests would like that, wouldn't they? But whatever it was, there's a lot of triangular clay altars and a lot of goddesses, and I'm always into a bit of goddess worship, me. And then there was upstairs in the treasure room, there was a lot of gold. So there was a gold wreath that reminded me of the leaves of Soli that we saw in Cyprus, and there was a lot of gold jewellery that all came from the Thracian graves in Sveshtari, which I'm hoping to go to later. I went months years ago, but we're hoping to go again on this trip, and so that was nice to see. But the main room, there was a copy of the Madara Husband. I'm hoping to see the original, though I believe it's quite eroded these days. And there was a lot of inscriptions, and there was a lot of gravestones and that kind of stuff. But again, there was nothing Islamic. Like, no, and telling like, I found one small stone, and it said something about it with a lyrical inscription on. Didn't say that it was in Arabic or Turkish, that it was at all Islamic. And there was literally, so from that whole epoch of history, there was one piece that I found, and it wasn't even mentioned it was Islamic, and there was nothing to say that the building they used had been a mosque. And the building, you know, I mean, I sit there and I do have a go at the Salafis for whitewashing over everything, but this was whitewashed, and there were bits where it was peeling off, and underneath there was beautiful Ottoman paintwork. And I just thought, wouldn't it be nice if they uncovered that and made something of this incredible building? That said, it had obviously been done in the Victorian time when Bulgaria was liberated, and I thought they'd done it quite cleverly, because they got rid of the mihrab, and they basically put a balcony around the edge, so that the whole building had a feel actually like one of those great Victorian museums. It really did, and you know, and the quality of the stuff was in there. But again, I was just a bit like, well, you know, I don't know. I love history, and I want history to be told in full, not in part. Anyway, that was that. So I thought, well, three museums is enough for the day, and time does tick ever onward. So I went back to the hotel, got my bag, and then I went on the metro all the way to the airport. One little thing, there was this girl on the metro station, and she was like hawking cards, like birthday cards or something, and I said no, and then I kind of like noticed she had an eye staring the wrong way, and so I beckoned her and said, go on, I'll buy one. Bit overpriced, but she probably saw an idiot coming, didn't she? But she said it was for the eye operation, so I don't know, my little good deed for the day. She seemed quite a sweet girl anyway, and so I hope she gets her eye op done. But took the metro out to the airport, and then got my rental car, which I'm in now. It's a Hyundai, and you know, a little bit nervous at the start, you know, obviously always getting used to a new car and getting used to driving on the other side again. but I'm kind of okay with it now, and I'm ploughing ever onwards towards Veliko Turnovo, which is of course the ancient capital of Bulgaria. Veliko Turnovo I've been to only once before, and it was on my very first trip to Bulgaria in 1998. I went there, stayed one night there. It was like a student hostelry type place. I paid £5 to stay there and got my own room, and I remember it was incredible. Like the railway, like it's all on a promontory high up above a gorge, and the railway crosses the river, it goes in a tunnel under the promontory and then pops out, and the city is clinging to the cliffs above you. So arrival by train is pretty good. But I wander the streets, you know, it's all that kind of Ottoman type housing. They call it National Revival. It's Ottoman, and there is a fortress that I've never been in actually. So quite looking forward to exploring Veliko Turnovo now that I know a lot more about Bulgaria, but also looking forward to seeing Alex. And we got the car, so we can go to all these out of the way places. So and I'm hoping, of course, that Alex has got a phone with data, so I can also use the GPS, because that will make life a hell of a lot easier. But that's it from me. I am back in Bulgaria. The weather is glorious. The countryside is gorgeous. The customer service has not got any better whatsoever. But nowhere's perfect. Till later. Keep travelling.